Stalking is one of the most fundamental skills that you can learn when it comes to hunting in the bush. What we're doing is we're talking about how you can move silently through the bush, how you can remain hidden and undetected so that you can find animals before they find you. And really it's a combination of footwork and using the terrain and obstacles to your advantage. It's something that takes years and years and years to master. So watching this lesson isn't going to make you a master stalker, but hopefully it gives you some kind of golden nuggets and some tidbits and some tips that you can use to kind of improve when you do go out there in bush and try and find some animals. So let's get started. So the first thing to think about when you're stalking is your speed, managing your speed. You want to be moving slowly. My friend Peter from Hunt Right would tell you, take your time. My advice is start to kind of walk and slowly move through the bush and then move half the speed of that. That's really how slowly you want to move through the bush. We're talking like moving like this. Quiet steps, because essentially what we're trying to do is minimize the amount of sound. Now it's okay if you're walking through the bush and you've got a certain location you want to get to, you can kind of move a bit faster to get to that location. But once you get to that location, let's say for instance it's a nice beautiful semi-open area where there's not a nice feed and you know the animal's going to be in there, that's when you really need to slow down. That's when you really need to move to an absolute crawl. Don't rush. If you rush through the bush and you make a bunch of noise, you won't see anything. Another time where you want to be mindful of your speed is during those golden hours. We're talking about early morning, late evening, especially if you're hunting deer who are crepuscular, meaning that they're most active during those times. That's when you really want to slow down and make slow, deliberate movements when you're walking through the bush. Don't rush. Avoid the rush if you can. So something else that you want to be conscious of when you're stalking through the bush is your footwork. You can see here I'm being really deliberate about where I'm placing my foot. I'm putting it heel first, then toe. Again, heel first, then toe. Where possible, I'm trying to stand on nice patches of cleared soil. I'm trying to avoid this crackly material, which is, again, when you step on it, it's really, really noisy. So where you can find like moss or these dry grasses or patches of earth, that's ideal. Now, you also want to be mindful of sticks. Again, here's an example of a stick. If I stepped on this stick, it might sound like a small kind of click, but in the bush, that's like a warning sign. That's an alarm bell to everything within 100 meters that I'm here, I'm moving in this direction towards them. So you need to be very, very careful of it. Something that a few people I've spoken to find super useful. In fact, it's advice from my friend Pete from Hunt Right. He would suggest that you're consciously thinking about the next 6 steps that you're going to take. You kind of map them out, almost like you're wayfinding. If you're thinking about walking up to that hill, it's like, okay, well, what's the terrain around me? There's a log here, there's a game trail here, there's crackly sticks here, there's rocks here, and you choose your next 6 steps based on that terrain that's available in front of you. And then you start to walk it. And while you're walking it, you're thinking about the next 6 steps that you're going to take. So you're constantly thinking about the terrain that's in front of you and how you're going to get where you want to go. Again, the key is being slow, methodical, careful where you put your feet. At the start, it's just going to take up a lot of brain space. You're constantly be thinking about it. As you become more proficient as a hunter, it will start to become automatic. And that's really the key. Once your footwork becomes automatic, then you're on the right path. So another key part of stalking is making sure that you're constantly scanning the environment around you. As you're walking around slowly, you're thinking about your footwork, you're thinking about your speed, and you're constantly looking. Now, you don't want to be like moving your head really, really quickly, because that's a dead giveaway to other animals that you're in the area if they see that sudden flash of movement. Because essentially, you're looking for the same thing. You're looking for movement. Very rarely are you stalking through the bush and you'll see a full animal, like a full animal silhouetted. Usually what you're seeing is like the flick of an ear or the flick of a tail or a horizontal line of their back or their head down feeding and their head popping up to munch. These are the things that you're looking for. It's really important that you're constantly scanning as you're walking. And every so often, stop and get your binos out and scan the area. Take your time when you're glassing. It's important that you glass. Lots of people move through the bush and they don't ever pull their binos out, they forget. It's really important that you do that. And also, when you find a good spot, take the time to scan the entire area. Don't feel like you need to rush, especially if you've got other hunters with you. Sometimes I found in hunting situations where I've got a few different people with me, we all stop, we all pull out our binos, and then you feel like you're on a timer. It's like, well, once they stop looking, then I have to stop looking, I have to put my binos away and we have to keep moving. Just slow down. Make sure that you use your eyes. Your eyes can do the walking, as my friend Pete would say. Let your eyes do the walking for you. You don't need to use your legs as much. You can just stop and sit and glass. Glassing, by the way, you've probably heard me use that term a few times. It means using your binos, just in case you didn't know. Something else to be considerate of when you're stalking through the bush is if you have a change in elevation or you move around a bend and all of a sudden an area opens up in front of you, again, that's a perfect opportunity to take the time to glass. You want to avoid just blindly moving through an area without having first looked at it. So as more area becomes available to you visually, make sure you stop and take that opportunity to have a look. Again, it's moving around a bend or cresting over a hill or dipping into a valley where all of a sudden you have more landscape available. That's a great time to stop and do some glassing. So another tip that my friend Pete has that will help you with the fatigue element of glassing is to use things like trees and saplings and sticks or even shooting sticks to brace yourself when you're glassing. Because again, when you're glassing, you're trying to keep your hands steady, but often what's actually happening is your hands are moving around, and that can make your eyes really tired or make it difficult to focus on things. But if you've got something like a tree, if you lean up against the tree, then you get a much more stable rest. Or even if you kind of push up against like this, you get a really stable shot to be able to see all that's around you, and it can help you want to glass more for longer periods of time. So use things like trees or saplings or logs or shooting sticks, whatever you can to stabilize yourself when you're looking. I mean, probably the best advice I can give you when it comes to glassing is glass often. My mate Pete from Ball Bore Adventures would say, you can't shoot what you can't see, right? So make sure you're always looking so that you can see things. Then at least you have an opportunity to shoot them. If you bust through the bush and you never stop to take a look, you'll never see anything. Here's another quick tip for stalking, especially in summer, and that's a great example. Flies are absolutely everywhere and they're gonna land on you. We've got really big, what we call march flies here in Victoria that bite you. You just need to avoid the temptation to constantly be swatting at them. Again, what you're doing is you're creating movement, especially if you're sitting there glassing and a fly lands on you. If you're constantly going like this, you're constantly creating little paddles, for the animals to see, or your hands are moving around. So be mindful of what your head's doing, be mindful of your body moving too much, be mindful of your hands moving too much. All of these are dead giveaways to animals that are looking for predators. Something else that I like to do when I'm stalking is use my sense of smell to help guide me. We make use of our eyes, constantly watching and scanning. We're always listening as well. So why not use your nose as well? In fact, if you're hunting things like bucks and stags, they're pretty stinky animals. Even goats, billies especially, are really smelly. Boars that are wallowing in mud, they all have a smell. It's quite a musky smell, in fact. And if you drop into an area and stop and take the time to take a big sniff, you'd be surprised how often you can actually smell the animals before you hear them and before you see them, especially if the wind's in your favor. And hunting with the wind is a whole other subject in itself. In fact, we cover it in a different lesson, and you should always be making sure the wind's in your face. Make sure you use your nose as well to guide you. It's really, really important. Constantly be actively stopping and taking a big sniff just to see what might be around the area. Another thing that I'm thinking of when I'm walking through the bush is how I'm using the terrain to my advantage. So where possible, I'm trying to maintain my elevation so I can stay up, so I can see more below me. And then when I do drop in elevation, I make sure that I use things like game trails so I can quickly and quietly and efficiently move through areas. Right now I'm crossing this creek using this big log because there's a clearing that I want to get over there about 200 meters away, where I feel like there will be animals there. And I'm conscious at the end of this log, there's actually a game trail that winds up through there. And I'm going to use that game trail. The great thing about that game trail as well is that there are trees on either side of it that will even further obscure me visually from any animal that is up there. So trying to use basic features in the terrain will really, really help you. You can also use things like the sun to help blind animals. So if the sun's behind you, an animal won't want to look directly at you. Now you need to be careful of skylining yourself and silhouetting yourself and making it really obvious, but if the sun is blinding the animals, that can help too. So try and use the terrain where possible to help hide you. So another quick tip that's really helpful when it comes to calling is be mindful of where you're positioned to make the best possible call in the best possible situation. I see people do this all the time. They get out their callers and they make call, and it doesn't matter where they are. They could be standing down here, call. Oh, but even then you can see that my feet are just like all over the place. I have no good footing. If I do see an animal, I have to pull my rifle out, take a freehand shot. It's really not ideal. A better situation is to make sure you have firm ground underneath you and a stable rest to take your shot. So up here, even 2 steps up, right here, now my feet are almost completely flat. And I've got this tree here to shoot off. So this would be a better position to call. I can stand here, make my call. Be completely relaxed, have a tree I can lean against, take a shot, not have to worry about, moving or getting in a position where I can hide behind something. It's a much better place to take a call. Even up, waiting till I get to the top of the hill, that would be a better place to take a call than just 2 steps down on this terrible kind of crunchy, loose material. So just be considerate about where you take and make your calls. You don't want to be in a position where you're slipping and sliding and you're unstable. Do it when you're in a good position. So in summary, be mindful of your footwork. Make sure your feet are always on nice firm ground, nothing that's too scratchy or loud. Again, nice bare earth is great. Be constantly scanning and looking. Make sure you're doing lots of glassing. Make your eyes do most of the walking for you. Don't feel rushed. Choose your paths selectively. Make sure you're using paths that don't drop too much in elevation and that work with you, not against you. If you do those things, you're in good stead to find animals before they find you.